Hey everybody, welcome back to the Multi-usiverse Podcast. My name is Garr Punnett. I'm the Chief of Staff and Lead Circular Economist at Rheaply. Today we were joined by Ryan Smith, the CEO of Recyclops, CEO and founder of Recyclops, and we got to have a great conversation about all of the impact that he is doing in both his rural and urban markets in recycling. We got to cover a lot of ground, so I hope you get to enjoy all the 45 minutes of what we recorded about how we did a deep dive into some of the logistics, the geographies, the pain points, the opportunities when it comes to everything that involves facilitating circular economic movement of materials, whether that's plastics, aluminums, diapers, or even glass. Yes, I said diapers. So I look forward to you joining, and we're going to head right in now on this podcast. Ryan, thank you for joining me. I'm so excited to have you. We are joined by Ryan Smith, the CEO of Recyclops, a good friend at this point. We can talk about how we met probably a little bit, but we've been able to keep in touch. But just someone I love talking to because you're so passionate about the industry. I'd love to hear, what does Recyclops do? What are you leading? What are you growing? Give the audience the little bit of spiel here of what you all are pursuing.
Well, first off, I'm glad we're able to talk, and it's always a pleasure. I feel like I've done a number of podcasts, but it's never with a friend. So it's fun to sit here and be able to talk to you, Garr. So so Recyclops, we are a circular economy logistics company. If I really had to kind of dive in and describe what we do in 2 words, it would be sustainability, accessibility. We're all about access. And as you look at access, one of the things that we really, our kind of starting point is recycling. I kind of look at recycling as the gateway drug to sustainability. It's easy, everyone can do it, and it gets you thinking about sustainability and circular economies. And it's really a starting point. And so that's where we start, although we're already expanding beyond that, and I hope we can continue to expand much more beyond recycling. But really looking at kind of the accessibility issue when it comes to sustainability, and particularly recycling, there are, I would kind of split the market into 2 underserved categories. You have what I would say is geographically underserved, and that's going to be places that don't have access to recycling because of where they are. And this is going to be apartments. Apartments I would lump into that it's kind of, I don't know if geographic's necessarily the right word. It's kind of type, but
well, you can talk about the markets too of what you serve, which I'm sure is next. So geographic does play a significant part in this. Yeah.
Significant part. And so you have apartments, you have about 16 million apartments in the US that don't have recycling pickups available to them. Maybe they can go drop it off at a park or, something like that, but their apartment complex where they live doesn't have an option for them. And that means that very, very, very few people in that apartment complex are going to actually recycle.
What I love about that is, and again, we haven't quite talked about geography, but even in Chicago, which is an urban market, it is still, there's a significant in the tens of percentages of apartments in which the landlords haven't opted into recycling, even when it's a law, it's an ordinance. And so this is it's mandated. Yeah.
No, exactly. The Chicago is one of my favorite case studies.
Actually. It is, yes.
There's a website that we've probably spoken about in the past, Garr, that's mybuildingdoesn'trecycle.com. And it's where people are self-reporting that their building doesn't recycle in Chicago, where it's a law. And if you look at it, it's like the whole map. The whole map is just pins. And it's
my favorite city. Yes.
It's like, dang it. It's a difficult problem, and just passing a law saying, oh, you have to do this now doesn't suddenly make it happen, because there's real challenges there. The other side of that is you have so that's like high density urban, you have this big problem. And then the polar opposite of that is where the other side of the problem is on this geographic side. And that is the outskirts of urban centers and getting into more rural environments. And that's an even bigger, problem, where we said apartments, I said it's about 16 million households, which is a big number. It's more than it's about 60% of apartments in the US. So kind of wild. And then we have on the other side, we have these outskirts of urban centers getting into more rural. That's about 34 million households. And out on the outskirts of every urban center, it happens. And sometimes it takes a little bit, you have to get a little bit further out to see it. Sometimes it's right there close. But it's big. I mean, you have the 34 million single family homes, the 16 million apartment homes. Suddenly we're talking 50 million households, 38% of homes in the US. Whoa.
Yeah,
that's like that. I still have to like double check that data every 6 months, because I'm like, that's too big. That's too many. It's like, no, that's real life.
And I think that's what's amazing about what you all are doing, the industry in general, is we've all, to some extent, varying levels, grown up with recycling. So we just assumed that, oh, this was happening everywhere. Everyone has access. This is natural, duh. And it's not the case. And I think that's what's exciting about our industry, circular economy in general, is now we're really understanding, okay, well, what are the barriers now? So when we talk about this addressable market in front of you, how, what have been the barriers to recycling access in some of these markets? And then also, I'd love for you to speak a little bit about, and I hope this isn't too controversial, but maybe the prejudice almost, or the bias that somehow rural markets aren't accepting of recycling, or aren't somehow politically it's not connected, when that really isn't the case.
Yeah, super fascinating. I love talking about this concept, because it's just it's surprising to so many people that, you look at where, first kind of understanding why do rural markets not have recycling. People's go-to is, because they don't care, and they think like, it's just a bunch of hicks or whatever, and it's like it's just not real life. Like, that's not how this works. You look at why places. One of my favorite examples is Beaumont, Texas, deep southeastern Texas, right up on close to the Louisiana border. And Beaumont is 2 hours from Houston. And that is significant because Beaumont has a couple 100,000 people. The county overall, it's actually a pretty well populated area. I mean, several 100,000 people, not that far from a major metro. But recycling as a whole, it's a business that is you need economies of scale. You need truckloads full of compacted material, which means you need 40,000 pounds of water bottles. That means you need, a water bottle doesn't weigh a pound. You need hundreds of thousands of water bottles. And you need, not even, that's to get a full truckload so you can economically transport it to the right recycling facility.
Can you quickly break down for those that maybe aren't familiar with that process of aggregation or even consolidation, what it takes for you all to make that happen and how the logistics works?
Yeah, so you have to, there's what are called material recovery facilities. They call it MRF or MRF is what it's usually called. So you have MRFs, and these are basically big sorting facilities. They're crazy. There's like they're just like tons of robotics. They're super advanced. They're mind blowing. And like, I know I'm based in Salt Lake. Waste Management just built a $26 million facility in Salt Lake. And that is how your recycling goes there, gets on all these conveyor belts, and there's human sorting and robotic sorting that is pulling out and separating materials. And recycling needs, in order to turn paper into paper, you need to separate it from the plastic. Goes without being said, there's different types of plastics. You need to separate those out from each other. And that's what these facilities are. So you sort these out, you bale them up in these big bundles. If you drive behind a Walmart, you'll see what a bale of cardboard looks like. Every Walmart has a bale sitting.
People probably have seen it all the time and not even realized that it's like a commodity. Exactly right. Like it's literally a commodity sitting there on the corner that, yes, that
you don't see there, but I see them everywhere now that my eyes have been dumping.
You can't unsee it now. You'll see it, everyone. Yes.
That's exactly right. And so when you need economies of scale to make this work, because like I said, you have that $26 million facility. And you really need a lot of, in order to make sorting economical, you need to do a lot of sorting. You need a lot of material. And guess where there's a lot of material? Urban centers. Guess where there is less material? not urban centers.
Right.
And the further you get from an urban center, the harder it gets, because the recycling infrastructure, the facilities that to handle the processing, the MRFs, that's all going to be in the urban centers. It's in Houston, 2 hours away from Beaumont. So in order for Beaumont to succeed in recycling, they need to get their recycling from Beaumont to Houston. And that's hard when you have a $300,000 garbage truck where you're paying someone $20-something an hour to drive it. It's extremely, very mechanical, lots of chances for things to break on that machine. But even if it doesn't break, even if everything goes smoothly, you're sending someone to drive 2 hours. They go and drive 4 hours on a route, get some recycling in the truck. They then drive 2 hours to Houston. They have to, wait at the facility to dump, do all that. It takes about half an hour, and then 2 hours back. They spent 4.5 hours of an 8-hour day not picking up recycling. And it doesn't work. The economics don't work. It makes so that recycling in Beaumont is impossible.
Now,
Beaumont has recycling.
Is that an abandonment of a previous recycling program, or is it the result of a recycling program never actually being in Beaumont?
So Beaumont's an interesting one, because Beaumont actually had its own MRF.
Of course.
Beaumont had its own MRF. Waste Management owned it, and they couldn't support it. There wasn't enough recycling in the market to support the MRF. And so Waste Management shut it down. We operate in a lot of markets that used to have recycling. Beaumont is a unique one because it actually had its own MRF. Most markets we operate in, that's not the case. But, Beaumont, so they had some level of recycling, and they had the MRF, they had everything. But then it went away because they couldn't make it economically work. And so that's a big challenge. And Beaumont is not unique. There's cities just like Beaumont everywhere, and they don't have, now there's hundreds of thousands of residents there, many of which want to recycle. And one of the things that, going back to kind of what you were asking earlier, one of the things that's most interesting for me is that people are passionate about this and that they care. And we've had people say things like, I never have been able to recycle before, but I've always wanted to. And that concept blows my mind. It's like, man, I understand someone who lived somewhere that had recycling and they're like, oh, I miss it. But they've never even had access. They want to.
Yeah, I think I love hearing that, because so often the narrative can kind of become burdensome, that recycling is somehow a problem, but that in so many of the markets that you're addressing, it's become aspirational, and it's become doing their part for their community and doing it in a way where it's so locally impactful that it's of value.
Yeah, and it is locally impactful. When you look at, these are some of the most beautiful parts of the country. Do you think they don't care? Of course they care. Of course they care, and they want, and recycling is, there are things out there that have been politicized. Recycling has not been, for the most part. Recycling is it doesn't matter if you're red or blue, you probably care about recycling. You probably think it's the right thing to do. And that's what we've seen, that people across the board, we're picking up from people who have Trump flags and people who have Biden flags.
Yeah. And I think that's important to really understand. And frankly, the undergirding of sustainability in general, which is that the economics of it play just as an important role as the social and environmental aspects. And that when we're viewing this industry in terms of dollar signs, that's the future. The future is actually understanding that the revenue can be driven. We can actually benefit the community. We can drive jobs. We can drive growth in some of these communities by understanding what our future looks like in this market. And to that point, what would a recycling infrastructure of the 21st century look like, in your opinion?
Yeah, so I'm obviously biased.
Yes, of course.
But, one of the big pieces about recycling that's a challenge is there are so many different materials, and it makes recycling so difficult. And so as I look at, recycling, one of the things that I see as the future is actually, this may sound crazy to say it, but less recycling. And what I see is more reuse. So going back to the milkman and saying, hey, why are we buying a plastic bottle and then throwing that in the landfill and buying a new plastic bottle and throwing that in the landfill and buying a new plastic bottle, when we could, have someone pick that up. We already have the garbage man's coming to your house and picking this up. Like, why is he not taking this to a facility to clean it and refill it and do that, instead of taking it to a place where we literally bury it in the ground? Like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Like, what a waste. Because that's what it is. It's a waste.
And in that, I think you're exactly right. And I think what we've been driving on Rheaply's end is always really pushing the boundary of what is cost spent on an item or resource that is of a diminishing return. So something that depreciates versus then how do you rethink the service revenue? How do you rethink, someone investing in an object, investing in a resource, but having that be serviced in some way to keep it at its highest life cycle? And I think in that respect, something as simple as a glass bottle can actually serve a household, and can actually drive again revenue growth, because you're building relationships then with households.
Yeah, no, it definitely. And the amazing thing is that it pencils. Like, when you look at like the economics of it, the dollar bills, like, there's a business model here.
Yep.
And like, that's what's fascinating. And so what, as I look at that, the other thing that I look at with the kind of the future is having a kind of broadening of the way things are serviced. Looking at like just this big mechanical garbage truck coming and doing everything. It's like, it's hard to fit that into the circular economy. We've tried to do it by having more advanced sorting and more of this, and that's
right.
Great. That's really cool. But I don't think that that's our only answer. I think that shifting how we think about things and how we service things is a piece of that puzzle. And that's what we're doing.
I think that's you're doing. I want to hear more about that too, and we can drill down into the model. But real quickly, in that answer of what the 21st century model looks like, then we've got things on Rheaply's end that seem like they're sort of out of our scope. Like, we can't control them. Yeah. I think you mentioned one of them in terms of material choices. Actually, one of the questions I had for you was around, are we ever going to see a future in which we are reducing the amount of materials that we use in consumer products? And that may or may not happen. Can you know of, or have you thought about other things, other sort of externalities? Is it policies? Is it some sort of community actions that are out of your control, but that would really make the case for you all, that would make your life easier to make recycling happen for these communities? Is there anything that jumps out to you?
Yeah, I mean, extended producer responsibility, jumps right to the top, where you suddenly, and as I think about extended producer responsibility, it's the concept, for those who aren't familiar, it's the concept of Coca-Cola, for example, having responsibility for the bottle after you purchase it. That they created a piece of plastic that, can't be reused, and that is going to end up, more often than not in a landfill, unfortunately. And they have responsibility for that. And they have responsibility to make sure that has the best life possible. I think extended producer responsibility, EPR, is going to play a big role in expanding recycling access, because it's like Coca-Cola or whoever it is can do all they want. But when 38% of homes in the US don't even have access, it's not that they're choosing not to, they don't have access. You can't get recycling rates up to where they need to be. And so, or reuse rates or whatever it is. And so I think that EPR is a big piece. And as I think about EPR, sometimes people think like, oh, it's, government stepping in and doing this. But I think back about like the early extended producer responsibility that we saw in the United States. And that is, I think about our waterways.
Oh, interesting.
And think about, you have big chemical companies dumping pollutants into waterways.
Are you speaking about sort of the building an identity, I'm trying to sort of remember what terminology is used, but having the river system or the waterways be protected in that way by building an identity around them?
Yeah, well, I'm really talking about the fact that, businesses were treating public land and like it was theirs. They were benefiting from public land at a cost to society. And that's what's happening now.
Yes.
It's that same thing with landfills. They're benefiting from public landfills. These big, CPG companies are benefiting from public landfills that are paid for by my tax dollars.
Yes.
And they're benefiting from that by creating products that have to go there.
Yep.
And it's like that, that's what they were doing when they were dumping water in our rivers, or dumping, chemicals in our rivers. And none of us, maybe back then there were people who were like, no, leave businesses alone. But that seems insane.
Yes, exactly.
Like, no, the businesses should not do that. That's public. And that's what's happening now. It's just happening not with chemicals in a liquid form. It's happening with chemicals that have been turned into plastic.
And I think to your point here, it's also happening. I mean, just as much as we might be fighting a battle in water and land, it's also happening in our air. And to that point, it's, from an emission standpoint, it's air emissions. You can't avoid it anymore. And this is where we need to actually get real. So with that, actually, that you segued somehow miraculously into the next question I had, which was really focused on how are we going to bridge the consumer recycling gap from CPGs, consumer packaged goods companies, like a Pepsi or a Coke, a Mondelez or a Unilever that output significant amounts of plastic. What are your crazy but realistic goals here on connecting those dots and making them realize, or making the economics work in their favor, where they would join someone like you and actually make a more efficient system in which an extended producer responsibility could be driven on a private perspective, not necessarily a public? Have you thought or put any sort of attention to that?
Yeah, I've thought and had conversations around that, which is exciting because it shows to me that brands, they're willing to have these conversations and they're interested in having these conversations. And I can't talk about all of it because of NDAs and whatnot.
Yes.
But it's real. But let's just think of an example here that kind of illustrates how this makes sense for a brand. We've mentioned Coca-Cola a few times. I think Coca-Cola has a lot of opportunity to do good in the world, and I think Coca-Cola has real aspirations to do good in the world.
Yes.
As I think, one of the things I've realized is that these companies are made of people who care.
100%.
And that's an impact. And that
we can villainize a company, but it's like, no. These are people, and they're trying their best. They're working the ways they can in the system. Yes.
No, that's exactly right. And they're the system that they kind of walked into wasn't necessarily in their favor, but they're trying to make changes there. But let's think of it. My wife loves Diet Coke. I don't understand aspartame, but she loves Diet Coke.
You like that good natural sugar. That's exactly right. Or at least high fructose corn syrup.
Okay.
Yes.
But imagine a world where, instead of my wife going to the store and choosing, should I get Coke or should I get Pepsi? Which is a real thing. I think I have both Diet Coke and Diet Pepsi in my home right now.
That is a crazy concept, but yeah, go ahead.
But I know. But imagine that my wife instead had a subscription to Diet Coke. And every week or every whatever, probably week, we get a crate of Diet Coke glass bottles delivered to our doorstep, and in exchange, I'm putting out the glass bottles that we've used, or she's putting out the glass bottles that we've used, and they are taking those away and washing them and refilling them. Coke suddenly has a subscription. Recurring subscription revenue is the best.
That's gold.
Revenue.
That's gold.
It is. And so guess who wins here? Coca-Cola wins here.
Yeah.
Guess who wins here? The consumer wins here. The earth wins here. Everybody wins there. And that's a situation where suddenly it's like, we don't have this world where it's like, Coca-Cola has to make sacrifices to do the right thing. It's like, no, Coca-Cola has an opportunity to do the right thing. And that opportunity is not just feel goods. That opportunity is dollar bills. And that's how I look at this, that there, sometimes we think about, oh, we have to make sacrifices, we have to do these different things. It's like, no, yeah, there are situations where that's true, but pretty often there are ways to turn, these our sustainability challenges into opportunities.
Yes.
And like, that's one simple example where it, very simple concept, but makes a lot of sense.
We've got the same thing on our end. We're dealing with, I'm saying this in air quotes for anybody who's listening, but a higher quality type of resources or goods. So things that might be found around your office or your built environment for perspective. But the same thing can be applied. I mean, in building in that relationship that a company, an original manufacturer has with the product that they're putting into the world, that by connecting them to some sort of subscription revenue, connecting them to some sort of recurring revenue in that way, will not only drive further building of that relationship that you have to the consumer, but then provides every opportunity for the upsell. And you get to grow each of your consumers as an account in ways that previously have been battled on the shelves of supermarkets, and in ways that result in having Diet Pepsi and Diet Coke in the same refrigerator. And so I think that's the real fun part. And I love hearing that you're having some of these conversations. So in all of this, then, we're talking about this sort of subscription revenue. It could involve glass. It could involve aluminum. Who knows what material it might. Why is glass so hard and yet so easy to recycle? What's up with that?
Yeah, glass. It's a tricky one. And the real trick with glass is that glass breaks. And when glass breaks, a couple things happen. One, it's dangerous, right? Broken glass. My daughter broke a glass bottle the other day, and it's like, you grab them and it's like, get out of here now. You need to stay away because glass is dangerous.
Yes.
And it's dangerous to workers. It's dangerous in that sense. At the same time, imagine a cardboard box. You have a garbage truck that comes. There's a glass bottle in this garbage truck, and there's a cardboard box in this garbage truck. The garbage truck then compacts. I say garbage truck, but recycling truck. The recycling truck then compacts. Guess what? The glass bottle breaks, and it gets shattered, and all these little glass shards get embedded in the cardboard box. Well, I've got news for you. That cardboard box is now trash, and so is the glass. And that's a huge challenge. And then on top of that, if the glass does make it to a MRF and where it can be recycled, it is very abrasive. And one of the things that glass is actually often recycled into is like sandpaper and like abrasion materials. And it's because it's really good at that. And it is going to wear down equipment significantly faster than if you have a facility that doesn't accept glass. So there are facilities all over the country that used to accept glass that are now saying,
just
we don't want to touch it.
From a depreciation standpoint, they're like, we're good.
That's exactly right. It's like, this is higher liability for people picking this on a sort line, and it's just wearing down our equipment. And so you have that combined with the contamination factor, and the fact that it breaks into these little small pieces that are hard to handle, and all of that. It just makes glass tough. Now, if you can actually get it to a facility, glass is an easy one to recycle. It's highly recyclable. We've found at Recyclops, we have a subscription for standard recycling, and we always keep glass separate. Glass is its own subscription. Someone has to pay a little extra for it, but we do it so we keep glass separate. And not every household has a lot of glass. And so for those that have a lot, they pay a couple extra bucks and they put their glass. We have all of our recycling's in bags. They put it in a thicker bag so it's more protected. And then we skip any of the cross-contamination step. We keep it separate and we drop it off at a facility that accepts glass, often a completely different facility from where we drop everything else.
And that
enables us to make glass recycling happen in places where it otherwise isn't happening. Like, I mentioned at the beginning that we kind of had two two underserved markets we go after: the geographic, which we've talked a lot about, and then we have the materials. And these are materials that are underserved, materials that markets don't recycle. So that's going to be soft plastics or multi-layer plastics in basically any market. In many markets, it's going to be things like glass. Like Recyclops operates a glass-only recycling program in Nashville, Tennessee. Or it could be weird things like we do a diaper composting program in partnership with a company called Diaper, DYPER. They make these bamboo-based diapers that use significantly less plastic. I guess the average normal diaper has as much plastic as 2 plastic water bottles.
That checks out.
So they set out to make, it's crazy. It's so crazy. They set out to make a more sustainable diaper, saying, hey, cloth diapering's the best, but guess what? A lot of people give up on it. So let's create a good alternative. And in conjunction with that, they said, hey, we don't want these to just go rot in a landfill, even if it's better than plastic. Let's create a composting program. They reached out to us and said, hey, could you do pickup of these? And we said, yeah, let's do it. And so it's like, okay, I wouldn't think like materials that people don't have access to recycle, diapers. Well, that's a big thing. We're launching that in DC and Raleigh and Baltimore this week, doing diaper pickups. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to, again, establishing the relationship with the consumer. And parents probably being a very dedicated consumer base, and new parents who are especially thinking more environmentally conscious of thinking, okay, I can do this small thing that will make me throwing away 2 diapers a day. Like, how many diapers are we? Like a lot, right? I mean, like it's.
I think it's cute. I think it's cute that you said 2 diapers a day.
That shows that I'm not a parent. That's
so especially newborns, they're going to deal 10, 15 diapers a day. It can be crazy. And
okay.
It depends.
Okay.
I mean, some parents are more, hey, diaper gets wet, I'm changing it. Some parents are like, I'm not going to change that thing until it's exploding.
I love that. I had no idea how many diapers. So I think on that, again, I swear I did not share any of these questions with Ryan today, but he's segueing right into the next question, which is establishing successful partnerships. How do you do that? What sort of tips do you have on establishing either private partnerships, so you all talking to a brand like Diaper, a larger CPG company, or a public-private partnership, which you also all specialize in as well, and maintaining all of the considerations that some public entity, like a small city, might be looking for, a town, while also balancing all of your economic and sort of environmental priorities?
Yeah, so I think it all comes down in all, whether it's public-private or private-private, really the big thing that it comes down to is just aligning incentives and making sure that we're aligned. So I look about, like, when we work with a city, just to take a step back, I haven't even mentioned how we actually work. And I think I'm gonna give
let's use that time now. Yes.
Brief explanation, just because I think it gives context in how we work with municipalities. We use a gig economy peer-to-peer approach to bring recycling to communities. So in the same way that you can call an Uber to your house and have them come, or you have DoorDash deliver, or you get shipped to deliver your groceries, and they're all using random local people, drivers in your community. We use that same type of model. We hire local independent contractors who go and pick up the recycling. All the recycling is bagged, and that enables that so that anyone in any vehicle can pick it up. We do keep large cardboard flattened and kind of put to the side, and but it enables us so anyone in any vehicle can pick up the recycling, and that has enabled us to go to places that garbage trucks can't reach, and pick up different streams of materials at the same time. We can pick up glass and mix stuff at the same time. They're in 2 different bags, and separate that. The bags act as a barrier for cross-contamination. It keeps loads cleaner. Our average contamination rate, so the amount of material that we get that ends up in a landfill, is 5 to 8%. Municipalities will see anywhere from 18 to 40%. So we see significantly cleaner recycling by doing it the way we do it.
Yeah, I don't think people really probably understand the impressive percentage that is. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I'm super proud of it.
Yeah.
And
can you give Can you give context into maybe real quickly on how you all communicate that to the consumer? Because I think there's a little bit of effort there on saying, hey, this is this is why we collect in the way we do, and this is the benefit. I mean, what have you all put into that?
Yeah, so we really try and drive that home, because one of the things that has been a kind of a thorn in our side, and I hate that it is that we use plastic bags to do pickups, and plastic bags are the enemy. And I avoid plastic bags like the plague, all of that. We did some pretty significant analysis and saying, hey, what's the impact of using reusable bags? What if we used paper bags? What if we looked at all the things, and as it came down to it, the lowest, carbon footprint, the lowest environmental impact that we could have was using, single-use plastic bags, the thinnest that we could possibly use, and have them still be strong and good bags. And that was the lowest impact. And so we feel, we could go and use, we've talked like, oh, what if we used, reusable bags? It looks better in the consumer's eyes. I just can't do it. It's greenwashing.
Yeah.
It's doing something because it looks better to someone, not because it's the better thing. And it may feel like, single-use plastic bags, I don't love it, but I've done the analysis. It's the best option for this, at least the best option we found to date. And so consumers, we really communicate about why we're doing it the way we do it. Hey, why are we using, independent contractor drivers? We talk about, hey, that it lowers our emissions per household, CO2 emissions per household by 5 to 7 times. We're emitting 5 to 7x less CO2 per household than a garbage truck would. Like, that's pretty impressive. We're doing about 40x less road damage, and roads are very carbon intensive to put down. And we're keeping the recycling significantly cleaner by having these barriers. We're able to educate consumers better because we're picking things up manually. We're able to see problems, take a picture, and immediately report that to a consumer and say, hey, we noticed you put this in your recycling, and we ask that you don't. And though all of those things, we really make a big impact.
And I think that's, again, highlighting building the relationship with the consumer and educating them. And as the industry, frankly, has not been doing, or the industry that we inherited probably was all about dumbing it down for the consumer. And that is not what I think we actually need to do, and what many consumers these days are asking for, which is to be educated, to know, to be knowledgeable, to be conscious of their action. You mentioned the bags again. You mentioned the local communities.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable talking about the bags and the partnership that you have?
Yes.
And that, I think, because that plays right into the private relationship as well as the public relationship. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. So one of our, we had, actually so funny. The GM, so the CEO essentially of Glad Bags, which is owned by Clorox, filled out a form on our website and was like, hey, I want to talk. And I was like, okay,
cool.
Yeah, we use plastic bags. We're using another manufacturer to make bags, and they reached out and said, hey, we want to talk. And I wasn't really sure what to think about that. But as we talked, we built this relationship with Clorox, and I was, as I thought about, this relationship, I had to really think about, hey, is this the big bad wolf? And as I thought a lot about that, the way that we thought about is that, hey, Clorox is trying to do better. And one of the ways they're trying to do better is by being connected, being involved with Recyclops and helping enable what we do and helping enhance what we do. And that's cool. Like, good on them. And how do if I want to make big changes in the world, the best way for me to do that is to not shun these big companies because, oh no, shame on you. It's to work together. Like, big players help make big changes, and we want to enable them to make big changes. We want them to enable us to make big changes in the industry. And so Clorox actually invested in Recyclops. We raised a seed round of funding this year, in March of this year, and they participated. They helped lead that seed round in funding.
So cool.
And we have a close partnership with them and their brands, and we're working on all sorts of cool projects with them. And they have, Clorox owns all these random brands that you wouldn't think they own, like Hidden Valley Ranch, they own a kitty litter brand, like all sorts of stuff. And, started with Glad Bags. First thing we did was we We developed special bags with Glad that use less plastic, almost half the plastic we were previously using, but are just as strong or stronger than our previous bags by using their technology. And that was a pretty exciting change for us.
Yep.
And it's fun, like, to have this partnership make immediate impact. And that's just scratching the surface. There's so much opportunity for us to work together with them, and them leveraging their relationships with retailers and different stuff to enable us to expand and to enhance our impact. So I mean, and you look at that, they, going back to what we were talking about, aligning incentives. Their incentives are aligned with ours. They want to do good in the world, and they kind of look at, like, hey, we're a little bit behind. We need to make some big moves, some pretty aggressive moves to catch up and get ahead. And let's make a bet on a startup. And that's what they've done.
I think that's incredible because, again, and I'm just reiterating it one more time, how it's all about deepening the relationship, deepening the commitment, and deepening the impact that any brand can have on the community that they serve through their product. And they're doing that through you all, which I think is fantastic.
And I've been amazed, no, I'm not, they're not, no one's paying me, but to say nice things about them.
Technically they are.
I guess so, but that's funny. No, but they have been an incredible partner.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of more that we can do together, and I hope that we do together, but it's been cool to see that impact and to see their caring. Like, even, this is so random, that the reusable diaper, or not reusable, the compostable diapers, they are not the cheapest diapers on the market. There's probably more expensive diapers out there, but and it takes commitment to do that. So I'm working with one of our main contact at Glad Bags. Talking to him, I mentioned what we were doing with diaper, and he said, "Oh, I'm a customer of theirs."
Oh,
and like, the people who are subscribing to be customer of theirs, they're the people who are hardcore, frankly.
Yes.
And like, that's the type of people that we're working with at this organization, are people who are like, they're hardcore. They really do care about this, and it's fun to have those be our partners. So.
And we've got on Rheaply's end, we've got our reuse heroes. Those are the people that will go as far as they can to help, really drive impact in the organizations that they serve, in the communities that they serve. So again, to the hardcore reuse heroes, that's what this episode is dedicated to. Well, we're at time, and I've so enjoyed our conversation. We end usually with a random act of reuse, in which you get to share one thing that you've done maybe this week, or something that comes to mind in which you've reused something to the benefit of its life cycle, or your community, or your family. Is there anything that comes to mind?
I have two things that come to mind, and I'm going to share them both. I know that time's short, but one, my daughter really wanted to paint something. She painted a rock the other day. And then the rock was all painted, and she wanted to paint something else. So I went and I grabbed a glass bottle that I had in my recycling. I pulled it out of my recycling, and she painted the glass bottle.
And now it's the best family glass that you have. Now it's the prized possession.
Exactly right.
Yes,
It's art sitting in my living room.
Yes.
And the other one that comes to mind is we've partnered with Imperfect Foods, who, if you don't know Imperfect Foods, look them up. They're awesome. It's all about keeping landfill food out of the landfill, whether it be ugly fruit, surplus, broken ends of pretzels from the petrol manufacturer, whatever it is, that's their focus. Well, they use ice packs to keep food that needs to be cold. Mm-hmm. And we've, with them, built a national program. And this is, we're a small piece in the puzzle here. They're really the leader here. But we built this national program where ice packs are picked up from a consumer's doorstep at the time of delivery, and taken back and sanitized and washed, refrozen and reused. And it's cool that it's truly the circular economy.
It is. Yep.
And I love it. It's one of my favorite examples of reuse, and I love that we get to be involved in it in a small way.
Well, and I think that small way, again, is a part of our circular economic mission, which is we all have more parts to play in, as you put it so well in the beginning. You are a sustainability, logistics, circular economy logistics company, and your small part actually allows the movement of many other parts. And so in that way, I think that is so commendable, and I'm so glad that we can share that in common and share that in the industry. Thank you so much for taking the time today. Please look up Recyclops. I saw that you all have job postings as well. So
we're hiring a lot.
You're hiring. So please check them out. You can. We will link it in our posts. But please, you can find Recyclops at recyclops.com. Ryan, thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, of course. Glad we could connect.
It was good to see you. All right, we'll talk soon.